So ever since we saw Cuchulainn's weapon, this question has racked my brain. How would Qin Shi Huang's Tortoise Ripple affect this weapon? The weapon is called Creed or Creed by Cuchulainn's words, but it seems like the technique that he uses is called Gae Bulg, which in the Fate series is the name of his spear. In this, it seems that it's simply just a technique. I think in mythology, Gae Bulg is also his spear. But this weapon basically got up and walked its way over to Ku and propped him up. Then he has actual dialogue to said weapon, to which Zeus calls it his other half. It seems to move on its own, as I mentioned. So does that mean that this weapon is alive? That tells me yes, which wouldn't be straying too far away from what we have seen so far. We have weapons like Thor's hammer that seems to be alive as well. And then of course, when Hades uses Desmos, it effectively becomes part of his body, which in turn classifies it as alive. Now, the reason that I have all these questions about how would Qin Shi Huang's Tortoise Ripple affect it is because, of course, what we saw with how it affected Desmos. When Desmos was inflicted with the blood and became a living thing, so to speak, Tortoise Ripple can now track its weak points. It can track the crux of its ki and disrupt that flow, which allowed Qin to win. Therefore, in turn, it should work very similar with the other weapons that have a living will, it seems. The problem, though, is Cuchulainn's weapon has something sewed into the fabric of its operation to where Ku actively destroys the weapon to use his ultimate technique, Gae Bulg. So my mind goes to this place where it's like, even if Qin could disrupt the flow and attack the weak point of said weapon, would destroying it even work? Because let's say he destroys the weapon, could Ku just theoretically call the weapon back the same way he does after it pierces through Ra and it's scattered all over the place from the scatter shot? Logic and what my gut is telling me is that I don't think Tortoise Ripple would be effective against this weapon. Don't get me wrong, I do think that he would have a lot of success early against Ku. He'd be able to redirect his attacks, and I do think that it could affect the log in and of itself, where he could weaken the attacks of it, which could in turn be compounded with the Tortoise Ripple that he's using to just simply affect Ku's body, which, if you guys didn't know, Qin has the ability to see the stars or cruxes of ki in his opponent's body, or in basically everybody's body. So he can shoot these breaths, these tiny breaths, which when they hit said crux, they weaken said opponent. Ra actually did something similar and tried something similar early in the match, where he actually uses his prominence field, which effectively nerfs the opponent's stats in both speed and power. He was able to block Cuchulainn's attacks with ease initially because of this, but Cuchulainn continues to get stronger throughout the fight. It seems like, although it's not been confirmed yet, that the more damage he takes, the stronger he becomes. We don't know this for a fact, but we do know for a fact that he continuously got stronger throughout the fight and was still amping his stats despite the fact that Ra had his prominence field active at a point, to the point where Ra actually had to counter instead of blocking or dodging. Whether or not Tortoise Ripple is being used in the early portions of the fight, which in character it probably wouldn't be, Qin would probably stay blindfolded, which would mean he's probably going to be redirecting Ku's attacks, and if my hypothesis is correct, he's going to be dealing a lot of damage to Ku, which in turn would make him a lot stronger from taking his own attacks. At that point, I think it would get to a situation where Ku's amping himself up again, and his attacks are now so strong that Ku probably gets overpowered in a similar light to what happened with Hades. If that does take place, you can expect the Tortoise Ripple to start being utilized, to which things get really interesting, because if the Tortoise Ripple is utilized, even if he is able to weaken Ku's AP, if Ku can continuously keep getting stronger, it could get to the point where it doesn't even matter if the attacks get weakened. They could simply just still be way too strong. As you see, even while extremely nerfed from Ra's prominence field, Ku was getting to a point where he was posing a real threat to Ra, and Ra did not want to take the attacks. You also have to take into account that the prominence field is also reducing speed, not just simply the AP. Because of this, we really don't even know what baseline Ku was truly capable of, because all we see is that of him in a nerf state, so to speak. Then you move on to the actual amped berserk version of Ku, that is much faster and stronger than the version previous, that uses his ultimate technique, Gae Bulg, which is far, far superior than anything he had shown before, nerfed or not. So Qin may have some early success, but when Ku inevitably uses Gae Bulg, I don't think that Tortoise Ripple could save Qin Shi Huang. I don't think that he could get rid of the weapon before he could use it, and I don't think that this could stop the barrage of all those different spears. Now, if that's the case, it would come down to speed between the two of them in a versus battle, to which the only metric to really gauge that would be like perception feats from somebody like Hermes, where we get this line of dialogue that those who can see it with their own eyes in reference to Ku's Gae Bulg technique were only but a select few strong individuals. But we see the likes of Hermes and Indra were able to see this technique. So this means that this technique scales far, far below the likes of Shiva, because Indra obviously lost to Rudra, who in turn lost to Shiva, and Shiva should have been getting stronger throughout that time. Unless we find out more lore about Indra getting a lot stronger, which is possible given that he's part of this new Apocalypse of the Gods tournament as well. But I still don't think he's going to be as strong as Shiva. And Hermes isn't nothing to slouch at. I actually think he's actually really underrated, and it's arguable that he actually saw the fist that surpasses time, which to our knowledge would put him really as the only person that was able to perceive that technique. The weird thing about it is that Hermes says that he just barely saw it. Now, Hermes, like I said, is very humble and he likes to conceal his true strength. It seems like when Ares pressed him about being able to see Zeus's fist that surpassed time, Hermes kind of deflected and acted as if he actually didn't see it. He just theorized in the moment, but then you get this sinister look on his face that tells us and implies that he actually did see it. And then Ares backs down, seemingly a little bit intimidated. And then Hermes goes on to basically exactly one-to-one explain what Ku did. When Qin Shi Huang is fighting, it doesn't seem like there's really any time where Hermes couldn't see what was happening. Although you could potentially make an argument based on the first time Qin used his heavenly handed defense, his armor form in Chi Yu, when Qin deflected Hades' technique. There is a line of dialogue where it's like, from what I could see. But then again, like I said, he basically describes exactly what happens. And obviously he could just be framing it in a humble way. Like, well, this is what my theory is about what happened. And he was actually positioned behind Qin. So it could just be like an unclear image. And it was also just more about like what specific techniques were happening. I don't know if it was a speed tier that wasn't being seen. I'll leave this up to you guys. I do think that they're probably in a relative type of speed tier, if not Ku just being faster. Also, Hermes could see Qin's final attack, it seems. And even if Qin was slightly faster than Ku, which I disagree with anyway, I don't think that his attacks are going to be enough to put Ku down before he goes into the berserk state and uses his ultimate technique. Like we saw the punishment he took from Ra, who was considered a top class fighter by both narration and characters within the verse, while actively amping himself with his Aurus armor and subsequently nerfing Ku with his prominence field that he uses in conjunction with the armor, like usually while he's attacking. And he was beating the shit out of Ku, and Ku endured all that pain. So he's got insane endurance. We also see that even Qin Shi Huang's armor form, his strongest straight up defensive blocking style technique, can be overpowered. Hades overpowered it. That's a lot of physical force that Hades possesses, but this Gae Bulg technique overpowered Ra's prominence field at maximum output, while at the same time getting narration boxes that says it can't be avoided nor defended against. So we know that it basically just hones on the target, goes through whatever it sees. It could be destroyed later at some point by a stronger person. We'll have to wait on that. In conclusion, I don't think Qin is going to be able to put Ku down before the berserk state is activated and before Gae Bulg is activated. And once Gae Bulg is activated, I think Ku finishes him with his ultimate technique. You could even make arguments that he potentially could win without it, but I'm not going to get into that here. Not to mention, I didn't even bring up the fact that Qin gets hurt by the damage he sees with his star eyes. So he's going to be taking recoil from his own attacks, which is just going to make this even worse. Now, being extremely fair to Qin, given that he is one of my favorite characters within the whole series, there's one potential pathway to victory for him, and it predicates him being effectively able to one-shot Ku if he gets this opportunity. The only way I could see a scenario where Qin could win is if he pulls out his sword that he used to defeat Hades, which it was the best defense is a good offense, and he uses the Tortoise Ripple to momentarily destroy Ku's log. He'd have to time it perfectly. He'd have to Tortoise Ripple the weapon and then land the sword strike. The only reason I say that this could be possible is because Ra was only doing blunt force damage to Ku and burn damage. It wasn't like he had a weapon that was piercing and stabbing Ku, which is something that's still unknown going forward. We don't know how he would react to something like that. But given the endurance that we had seen, I don't think that Qin is going to one-shot him, but it is possible. So in that one scenario, if you argue that they're relative in speed, if you think that Qin is fast enough to land this, fast enough to do it before Ku could call back his weapon to his hand, he may have one path to victory, but I would still say 9 out of 10 times you're looking at Ku as your victor. But I think this is a really bad matchup for Qin. Hope you guys enjoyed the analysis. With that said, Record of Ragnarok chapters are gonna be out very, very soon, so make sure you stay locked in and be prepared for those videos to be dropping in the next coming days. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.